From San Diego, California, this is a One Extraordinary Marriage show, where being busy is overdone, romancing is fun, and scheduling sex has taken the guesswork out of wondering when you're going to get some. I'm Tony DeLorenzo, your co-host, along with my beautiful wife, Elisa. From coast to coast and around the world, thank you for joining us. It's time to talk sex, love, and commitment. Give us a call on the HUG hotline at 858-876-5663 or send us an email to hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. In today's show, we talk about the challenges of living paycheck to paycheck and its impact on your marriage, especially in the bedroom.
And as we start talking about money in today's show, I want you to think about this quote attributed to Anonymous that says, "Money is an opportunity to reach unity in marriage. When couples work together, they can do anything."
That's for sure.
So true, so true. And we're going to be talking so much about that in today's show. But as we start each and every One Extraordinary Marriage show with a hug, this week is no different. And for those of you brand new to the show, welcome. Tony and I are so excited to have you as listeners. And for those of you that may not have heard a hug before, a hug's an opportunity for you to hear from someone else in the one family, someone who's had breakthrough or experienced restoration, who's seen a change in their marriage. And this week's hug is sponsored by HelloFresh. HelloFresh is a meal kit delivery service that shops, plans, and delivers step-by-step recipes and pre-measured ingredients so you can just cook, eat, and enjoy.
That's right.
Each box is made up of fresh, responsibly obtained ingredients from carefully selected farms and highly rated, trusted resources. And think about it. Think about the ability to enjoy not having to plan dinner, spending money on takeout for an easy night, or worry about gathering ingredients week after week.
Heck, we just had some friends grab a HelloFresh box, and I saw the husband today, and we were just chatting, and he was ecstatic about it. He loved it.
Absolutely, because all the ingredients come pre-measured in handy labeled meal kits, so you know exactly which ingredients go with which recipe. And in all honesty, this is one of our favorite aspects of HelloFresh. I mean, every week when we open our box, it's seriously, it's like Christmas, because I'm like, oh, what goodies are we going to get? And then there's just the peace of mind of knowing that everything's measured. It's already in the pre-made kit. So all I have to do is match up the name on the kit with the protein source, and I'm ready to go. It makes it so easy for me. And the fact is that this lets me and you spend less time meal planning and grocery shopping each week so that you can get that time back to do more of what you love. And for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh, visit HelloFresh.com and enter OEM30. That's right. For $30 off your first week of HelloFresh, all you have to do is visit HelloFresh.com and enter OEM30. Now, this hug comes from a Facebook message that we recently received, and it comes from a husband who says, "When we married, I was working 4 night shifts a week as a paramedic. Our only interaction was, on average, a 5-minute period once I got home before she left for work. On top of everything else, I was a recovering porn addict of 13 years. Needless to say, we both felt more like roommates than a married couple. With my history and our total lack of development, I knew we needed help. I prayed for God's direction to help save my marriage and searched for anything to improve our marriage, but was having trouble finding resources. One day I decided to do a search on Google Play for sex and marriage tips and found your show.
Right on.
I listened to a couple of episodes and was blown away. My prayers were answered. I really enjoyed how outright you were on the Christian faith and its importance in sex and marriage. You guys were both candid and respectful on how you addressed your topics. I took a leap of faith and had my wife listen to some episodes. Although she does not typically enjoy listening to podcasts, she absolutely loved your show.
There we go.
On the next road trip, we printed out the 19 questions and answered them all. Since then, things have dramatically changed. For a while, we did the intimacy lifestyle and it worked very well. Over time, we've had to adapt it to fit our current lifestyle.
Way to go.
And that comment goes all the way back to last week's show, episode 422, where we talked about really making the intimacy lifestyle something that's yours.
It's your own.
Right. It's your own. He goes on to say, we went from having sex maybe once every 3 weeks to 3 to 4 times per week consistently. Thank you guys for all that you do. You really are changing lives.
Love it.
That's so powerful. So much going on in that marriage. And, they were talking about all the disconnect that they had. And, as we jump into today's show, one of the biggest areas of disconnect, one of the biggest stressors, not just, facing the world, but facing individuals and specifically couples, is money.
Money.
We're gonna be talking about dollars and cents and all that comes with it, because I, in preparation for the show, did some research on let's talk about what are the statistics. around money
Well,
in marriage.
and most importantly, I mean, we all deal with money almost every day of our life. You know, prior to getting married, the wedding day, honeymoon, and thereafter, from just you guys being a couple together to being a couple that's adding a kid to purchasing a house, a car, new businesses, business not doing well, economy going great, economy tanking. Money is something I think we most of the time are talking about, maybe not always talking about, but thinking about on a pretty much a daily basis.
Well, it's interesting that you say that about talking about, because there was a 2014 Stress in America study that was done by the American Psychological Association. And their findings were that 18% of those surveyed say money is a taboo subject in their family. And 36% say talking about money makes them uncomfortable. Now, you've got those things. So we're not talking about it, right? But 72% of adults report feeling stressed about money at least some of the time. That's basically 3/4 of us. That's a lot of people that are feeling stressed some of the time. And 26% of adults report feeling stressed about money most or all of the time. It's a lot of stress. And you know, here's the statistic that kind of freaked me out, was that Money Magazine did a study on couples and money in 2014. And they found that 70%, so just get that big 70 number in your head, of married couples argue about money. That's ahead of fights about household chores, togetherness, sex, snoring, and what's for dinner.
So, say you're out for dinner and hey, let's just put it this way. Let's say you're at a dinner party. It's all couples, 10 of your friends, including yourselves, are there. 7 of 10 of you have at one point in time or are currently arguing about money. Just sit down. Just visualize that real quick. Wherever you are, if you're driving, please don't close your eyes.
Yeah, don't close your eyes if you're driving.
But think about that. It's a topic that we don't want to talk about. It's a topic that we want to shy away from. People are saying it's taboo to even bring up, and yet 7 out of 10.
And then, you know, as we were really thinking about this show specifically, about this idea of living paycheck to paycheck, I was curious about, you know, what are those numbers? Who's living paycheck to paycheck? And in 2017, Career Builder did a survey that says up to 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And because of that, we are having these extraordinarily high levels of stress. Now, there are a couple of things that happen when you have high levels of stress. Stress raises your blood pressure, it increases depression, and it increases anxiety. And I have to tell you that those 3 things are an incredibly dangerous or combustible combination, not just in your marriage, but more specifically in your bedroom. Because if we're living paycheck to paycheck and that's causing stress, and stress causes high blood pressure, well, let's talk about what that high blood pressure does to both men and women.
Yeah.
Right? Because here's the thing, you know, we can talk about feeling stressed. I mean, how many times you ask somebody how they're doing? Like, I feel stressed. Okay. We all go there. But the fact is that in men, high blood pressure, the impact that has is that high blood pressure results in decreased blood flow throughout the body.
Penis being one part of your body.
You know, interestingly enough, it is one part of your body.
Isn't it? Right?
Yes.
And it needs blood.
It does need blood.
To get erect.
So if you've got high stress, high blood pressure, low blood flow, you might have erectile dysfunction. Or it might be a cause. Again, we are not medical doctors.
Nope.
We're not making any diagnoses here. But if that's been a situation in your marriage, it's possible that financial stress is actually at the root of that.
Just trying to connect some dots for you guys. And if this is something that's going on and you realize, because we're speaking about financial stressors, you know, or just talking about finances, just trying to connect some dots here. If you have some more pertinent or more larger issues that are going on, please seek medical help.
Absolutely. This show is not intended to diagnose anything. What we're trying to do is to shed light on what can be impacting what's going on in your bedroom, where it seemingly you may not have ever put those dots together before. Like Tony said, we're trying to connect the dots. Because for women, high blood pressure, that low blood flow throughout the body, can result in low libido or low sexual interest in women. So now we have 2 people that potentially are stressed because of finances, because we read all the statistics saying that everybody's got some kind of stress and fighting and that kind of thing. And we're wondering, what's going on in the bedroom. Right? Because here's the thing, we've been there ourselves, and we're going to share a little bit of our story, but I also want to talk about those two other things that happens with the high stress, right? It increases depression and it increases anxiety. And, we've shared on previous shows, and any of you, okay, quick, I am going to back up and say again, this is not intended to diagnose, nor are we doctors. And we're also not telling you if you are taking medication for any condition to get off your medication. I'm just pointing out that if you read the list of side effects for many, not all, but many medications for depression or anxiety, one of the side effects is loss of libido. Right? So you've got these medications to treat these situations that are actually, in some respects, will also be contributing to the stress and anxiety and possible depression that you feel about what's going on in your bedroom. All going back to money. Right? And what's going on financially. And so we've got this cycle, this vicious cycle. And so many of you, whether you've been listening to the show, for years, or this is your first time, you understand that marriages have these cycles, right? Some of them are great. And some of them get really, almost like a tornado, really destructive, where, you're stressed because of money. So you're not feeling up to having sex. And so now we're having, low libido, lack of connection. And that just is leading to more stress. And so it starts to spin out of control.
Yeah.
And the fact is, we come behind these mics because we've lived this out in our own marriage. Right. When Tony and I got married, we had over $50,000 in debt.
And in today's dollars, that's like $70,000.
At least.
No, it is. I did the calculation.
Oh, you did the calculation.
Yeah, with inflation and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we had collectors calling us.
That's always fun. And so I'm going to just say this right now to those of you who are listening right now, and maybe you have collectors calling you. I just want to let you know that we're praying over you guys. Do know that. And you're not alone. You're not the only one who has a collector calling you. And hopefully what we're going to be talking about, how to help you go from living paycheck to paycheck, will help get these collectors off your back. But do know you're not alone. We've been there ourselves, and we know many others in the one family who have been in that very spot.
Because it wasn't just the collectors calling us. I mean, I had real concerns about how are we going to pay our bills, or which bills were we going to pay?
Oh yeah, we did the shuffle.
We did the shuffle. I wish I could find it. It kind of comes up in conversation every time we start talking about money. But there was a point in time where we made a list on the 5x7 yellow notepads of all of our debts, and that number, I'm telling you, freaked me out because between the collectors and just wondering what this is all going to look like, I had no desire to be intimate with my husband, and we were newlyweds. How awesome is that? Totally stressed, not interested in sex, and that was one season where the money was really bad. It happened again in, 2007, 2008?
2008, we really began to feel it when the Great Recession hit here in the United States and globally as well. Many of us felt that. And so that was a tough time for me because I had launched my service business in 2003 here in San Diego. And from 2003 to 2000, probably like the fourth quarter of 2007 and into 2008, early 2008, we were on a tear. We were just going. And I began to see things starting to happen at the end of that fourth quarter of 2007. Little did I know, and many of us know, what was to come. And what a crash it was for many of us. And I remember struggling because there were days when there was nothing coming in, no phone calls. I would be out in the field. There was nothing out there, nothing. And I remember just looking at that checking account number and just wondering if we were going to make ends meet from the beginning of the month to the end of the month, and having to crimp and having both of our kids and putting food on the table. That and it's tough. Like I love folks who can they can just remember their past. Like they can pull things up, and there are definitely things that I can pull up, but there are definitely times for me when things are so tough, and it's in times like this period in my life where I've blocked things out. But one thing I haven't blocked out, and I still remember to this day, were the struggle of getting out of bed in the morning. Because like Elisa said, when you're dealing with financial issues and financial stressors, depression, anxiety, fear, all builds up, and I could just feel that weight upon my chest and on me. So to even pull myself out of bed and put my feet on the ground to get out was a tough time. I remember Elise and I just the distance growing. We were still talking about our money, and yet it was a struggle. I remember in this period of time we were doing the intimacy lifestyle. I don't remember how we were doing it.
Well, we actually did the 60 days at the end of 2008.
Okay, so we hadn't started.
We hadn't the first
that first
8-9
part
months of 2008.
But going into 09 and even 10, we lost our home in 2012.
Right.
So we this thing went on for years. I mean, you're talking about 08 to 12, 13, even coming out of that, rebuilding our credit, and I mean, so you're talking about when Elisa's talking about like a season. I mean, we're talking 5 years here, building and developing our financial intimacy and getting back on our path again.
Right. Because the first time we'd gone through it, we picked up some skills and we'd kind of worked through that. And so, heading into 2008, we had a little bit more communication around it, but it still wasn't anywhere near what we had to do to get to where we are today. Mm-hmm. Right. We were still living paycheck to paycheck. We were still going, okay, we've done this once before, and I'll be honest, there were times I'm like, why is this happening to us again? Right. Why can't we seem to break out of this cycle? Why do I have to worry about money? And I know that's a question a lot of you ask. And what we're going to share with you, what we want to equip you with is the understanding first and foremost that just because it's been this way doesn't mean that it always has to be this way. Doesn't mean that it has to stay that way. Doesn't mean that you have to live with this stress impacting your marriage and impacting your bedroom, right? Some of this, I'm going to be real honest, some of this is mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Some of this is, well, it's always going to be this way for us and we can't do anything. Well, if you throw your hands up in the air and say, I'm a victim and things are never going to change for us, guess what? I'm going to be real honest with you. They're not going to change for you. But if you say today, right, as you're listening to this show, you know what, Tony and Lisa, you're right. You're right. I am going to take control of the rest of my life instead of falling victim to circumstance. And I'm going to say, you know what can I do? And we're going to get into some of those things that you can do. But hold on, Tony.
No, I just, as Elisa was talking, there's this awesome YouTube video, and I think I've made mention of it here in the show before, but I'm going to do it again. I'm going to put it in the show notes, but you can go to YouTube and just search for I Can Handle It, and it'll say motivational track from Stephen Furtick. And I'm telling you, if you're in a place where you're frustrated and things are coming at you, especially from the financial world, like your business isn't going the way you want it to, maybe you're in a job and you're feeling frustrated in there, and maybe you're just feeling boxed in and you're not too sure where your next move's going to be, listen to this track. Mm-hmm. I have done periods of time where I will listen to this track day after day after day after day, because it's that motivation that I need, knowing that I have a Father who's bigger than anything I can even understand in my own life, and I can handle it. I can handle it because of His strength. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But again, you can go to YouTube and look for it there.
So we do want to share a few strategies that you can use starting today to make that difference that we've been talking about in your financial and sexual intimacy. But before we do that, we want to just give a thank you to this week's sponsor, HelloFresh, who is offering all of you in the One family $30 off your first week of HelloFresh when you visit HelloFresh.com and enter OEM30. This is going to allow you to spend less time meal planning and grocery shopping each week and get that time back to do more of what you love. So what do you do when you're living paycheck to paycheck? The first thing, as we talk about the fact that it doesn't, just because it's been that way, doesn't mean it has to stay that way, is that understand from the get-go that pouring more energy into the communication around your finances is going to actually strengthen the communication in your entire marriage, right? Because that greater financial intimacy can actually, and often does, lead to greater sexual intimacy. I remember having coaching clients a while back, and one of the things they said to me is like, Elisa, once we realized that we developed the skills to talk about money, all we had to do was pivot that to be able to talk about our sexual intimacy. And it skyrocketed for them. And I'm like, amen.
You guys have to, we talk about sex so much here on the One Extraordinary Marriage Show, and you got to talk about it. It can't be that taboo subject anymore. Same thing is going to happen with your financial intimacy. It cannot be a taboo topic that you guys are skirting around and expecting to have the sexual intimacy, the emotional intimacy that you desire.
Right.
And maybe it's going to have a tough conversation. You're going to have tough conversations, and you may have to say no to one another and each other on certain items or certain things or certain places you want to go. You might have to. I'm not saying it's fun, and yet you have to have those conversations. Elisa and I, over the years, do this on a monthly basis. We discuss what's coming in. We know what's coming in. We know our outlay. In some months, as tough as it is, sometimes for me as a provider and Elisa as well, wanting to give our kids things and wanting to live a certain way, sometimes we just got to say, no, not right now. It's not no, never. It's a no, not right now. We can start setting aside money for that, though. If that's something we want, then let's start putting a little money aside. In 6 months, a year, 2 years, we'll get there. But we got to have these conversations, folks.
And I hope you heard the plural on that. Having the conversations around money, it's not a one and done.
No, not at all.
It's not a one and done.
No.
So the first thing is you've got to know what you're spending. Mm-hmm. Right? Any of you out there in the one family that have been my coaching clients, you'll know that I'll tell you, if we're talking about finances, I'm going to tell you to track what you spend for a month.
What's something that you use right now that somebody can pick up, an app, whatever it may be?
I like the EveryDollar app.
Okay.
I think it's affiliated with Dave Ramsey or Ramsey Solutions. Mm-hmm. It's a free app. It just helps to just keep track. Like I just enter in every time we spend something and it tells me where I am in the month. Okay. But the reason you need to track what you spend and then that first month, don't change your spending habits. You just got to develop an understanding of where your money is going. Right. And in conjunction with that, you got to know what you owe. Right? Credit cards, car loans, student loans, mortgage. And here's the thing, because we're talking about conversations and developing your financial intimacy and just wrapping your head around the fact that living paycheck to paycheck is not a life sentence. And that's the fact that both of you need to understand what's going on financially. Right? There can't be financial secrets because that's the same thing as financial infidelity. Right? And I'm just going to be real clear. Anytime we talk the word infidelity, don't do it. Right? Don't keep secrets from one another. Don't keep financial secrets. Financial secrets have the same breach of trust feeling for someone as having an affair, having a physical, emotional affair. It creates the same feeling. So don't keep secrets. Just lay it all out there. And after that month of tracking, it's time to be intentional about where your dollars are going to go. Create that cash flow plan, budget, whatever you want to. If budget freaks you out, don't call it a budget. Call it our money plan. Call it our finance. Call it something just so you can refer to it. But if you don't like the word budget, change it. Mm-hmm. Nobody cares, right? Then, as Tony said a few minutes.
And I just want to say something in terms of wording, right? Because we've talked about this and how our words matter and they have power. So if budget is something that feels like a constriction, like you can't get out of it, then don't use it. It's interesting because Elisa and I have been doing a 7 Days of Sex challenge recently, and one of the members of Position of the Month Club, you can check that out, positionofthemonthclub.com, they said the word challenge for them is tough. They've done 7 days, except the challenge word forces them into a weird place. So they change that word so that they can achieve what they want, which is to have sex 7 days in a row. Mm-hmm. Same thing with your finances. If the word budget is limiting you, then use, Elisa and I use cash flow plan because it's our cash. It flows in, it flows out, it works. It works for us, not for anybody else.
Mm-hmm. And so in that, just like we talk about the intimacy lifestyle with your money, we talk about, with your sexual intimacy, what does that look like? How many times? What are you doing? How are you initiating? The same thing needs to happen with your financial intimacy in your marriage, right? Like, what are those things you need to plan for? Mm-hmm. Right? When we talk about the 7 Days of Sex challenge, we plan that around my period. We plan that around vacations. We plan that around, busy stuff. What do you need to plan for over the course of the year?
And we're, in the first quarter here. So Christmas is going to come up.
It's coming.
It's coming. For some of you, birthdays come every year. You know, some of you want to forget about them nowadays, but that's okay. Birthdays come up. We have wedding anniversaries. Those, you know, do you want to celebrate that in style, whatever that is for you guys? Maybe one year it's just going out for a nice dinner. The next year might be your 5th, your 10th, your 15th. You may want to do an overnighter. You may want to take a week-long trip. Start now, because every little bit now makes it so much easier to plan for later.
Absolutely. And, you know, for some of you, you may switch to a plan where it's easier for you to monitor your money when you're using cash for everything, right? That's another option, is to use cash for everything. Use lists. This is one of my favorites. Use lists and only shop off the list, because if you have kids and you take them shopping, let me tell you, you end up with so much more stuff in your grocery cart specifically than you ever planned. But if you say it's only what's on the list, you're going to find it easier to stay in that place where you're like, okay, like I'm only going to buy what's on the list.
And this goes for us adults as well. Like,
yes.
Don't go walking into the grocery store when you're starving and then all of a sudden you picked up $50 more worth of stuff that is all impulse. Know yourself. If you're hungry and it's not a good time, even though it may be convenient, we get it. We get there as well, and we're sharing from experience, because I can walk through a grocery store on those times when it's just like I'm starving and it's like all of a sudden we have all this stuff and I'm like, why did we just buy all this? You know? So, you know, we when we share, we're also sharing to ourselves, because we have to hear it ourselves again to be like, yep, that's right. Need to make sure we're using that when we're out, you know.
And here's an idea that I hadn't come across before, but I think it's something that Tony and I are going to try. It's this idea of having a no spend week. Mm-hmm. And we'll keep you guys posted when we actually do this. It takes a little bit of planning. But the idea is that you get very intentional about a 7-day period. Just like we do with the 7 days of sex challenge, and you make the decision that you're not going to spend money. So you're not eating out, you're not grabbing coffees, you're not, you're not running to the grocery store just because you need something. You're actually being intentional about the food for that week. You're not just shopping, just because you got nothing better to do, right? And so it's this idea. So we'll keep you posted as we develop that one. But find
in that, and I just want to say something like that again. Requires our emotional intimacy, our communication to be on the same page. Because if Elisa just out of the blue just goes, hey, we're going to have a no spend week, I might be going like, whoa, what does that entail? Mm-hmm. And, you're just throwing it on me. But this week might be some week where I'm going, well, we have some expenses we need to do. We need conferences to pay for, or this or that, or whatever it may be. Right. So let me wrap my head around it. Let us discuss this. What does it look like? It may not happen after the first conversation. It might. I don't know yet, because like Elisa said, something that she just found and she mentioned to me briefly. So it's sort of like, okay, what does that look like for us?
Absolutely. And, in the spirit of, this year's hashtag, what can I do? The most important thing is to ask yourself these two questions, especially as you're dealing with the stress of living paycheck to paycheck. And the first question is, what's one thing that we could reduce this month? Maybe it's cable, maybe it's, coffees, eating out,
I haven't had an espresso since the beginning of February.
There you go.
And I'll tell you, having loved my Starbucks double shots and things like that, you want to talk about saving some cash? I've noticed it.
Oh, sure.
A huge, just being able to just go, you know what? I don't need a coffee today. I don't need an espresso today.
Absolutely. And, take a look at your statements and see where are those recurring costs or subscriptions. Mm-hmm. So what, first question is, what's one thing that we could reduce this month? Right? Let's create a little margin. The second thing is, what's one way that either one of us or both of us could make extra money? Right? If you're living paycheck to paycheck and you have no margin, the two ways to create more margin are to reduce your expenses or to create more income. And if you really want to see margin, get explosive growth in your margin, do both. Mm-hmm. Right? Can you pick up a part-time job? Can you, sell this? Everybody's got stuff in their garage that can be sold. Well, let's just face it. Can you, volunteer your services? It's not volunteer them, but create a side hustle. Mm-hmm. Right? What can you do to create a little extra income to give you breathing room? Because the thing is that when we start getting really intentional about our financial intimacy, when we say that we don't have to be stuck living paycheck to paycheck, that there is a way to do things differently, all of a sudden that breathing room actually translates into intimacy on all levels, including in the bedroom with our spouse.
Yeah. Financial intimacy, you guys, it's something that needs to be talked about, needs to be addressed, because with that, it allows us to achieve much more. Physically, mentally, emotionally, each one of those come together and allows us personally to be strengthened and as a couple to grow together. It's one of the areas, folks, that we need to address. And this week, we challenge you to look at your expenses, to look at where you're spending your money. Start that out right now to see what's going on so that you no longer have to live paycheck to paycheck, but you can begin to thrive in your marriage and in your life in the matters of money and financial intimacy. We love you guys. Have a fantastic week, and we'll catch you next week. If you'd like to share a hug with us, again, you can share those at hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. Love you guys, and we'll catch you next week.